episode 6, Days, this is Latrina, something like that. Something like that. It's your boy Icon with some DC TV, and happy Thanksgiving, one and all. So, in this this episode of Legends, episode 6 here, we are, well, they thought they were stuck in Dinosaur Land. And, because when, in the last episode, they all jumped in the time machine, and the whole group, like, they were supposed to go to Tahiti or Aruba or something, and they ended up, like, in some random forest. So, this episode wasn't really, like, Legends heavy. It was more of the Bishop story. And they crossed a lot of T's and dotted a lot of I's as far as Bishop is concerned. But we'll get to Bishop in the end. So, quickly with the Legends, gonna say, because the Legends really didn't do that much. While everybody was, when they realized they were stranded, they spoke to Gary and they spoke to Ava, since they were like the resident time masters with all the time knowledge. And Gary had said that they might be in prehistoric times. So then everybody broke up into teams to see, like if they can contribute to getting themselves out of there. Constantine and the Tarazis, they went to go find parts or try to find a conductor or something they can use to generate an electrical charge so they can fix the ship. Spooner and Astra, they split up the captains because Ava and Sarah weren't really like meshing. They were kind of like freaking out, and everything. They were losing their ish. So Spooner took Sarah to go hunt for food, and Astra and Ava went to go look for firewood. Well, they went to go chop some firewood. Nate stayed behind so he can contemplate on whether or not he wants to live with Zari in the totem. Both Gideon and Gary went off to look for nuts and berries. And they found him, all right. The two of them had sexual relations, and it was like, that was so funny. She's like, "Do you want to have sexual relations with me?" And then Gary was like, "You damn right." So that was it. And that's when everybody was just concentrating on that and trying to, like set up camp and everything so they can get home. So now the Tarajis and not Constantine, they were, going through the forest. And while they were going through the forest, like, like not Constantine, like he started like freaking out. He started like wigging out, and he was kind of like, it felt like he was having like PTSD. And they tried to talk to him, and he snapped at he snapped at Bayrod, and then he walked off. Zari went after him, and then she had a conversation with him. While the two of them were talking, they basically got run up on by some soldiers. So apparently they're not in prehistoric times because there were soldiers there. The soldiers took them, snatched them up, and then brought them to their holding facility. While they were in their holding facility, not Constantine ends up like freaking out again and like going like crawling up into a ball. And then both he and Zari had a conversation, and he told Zari that he used to be in the military, and while he was fighting the war, he had like a best friend, he had a whole unit, and he said that both him and his partner, they were on their way to go get a message, and they were supposed to deliver that message back to their unit to let them know that there was danger. They got ambushed on the way back, and because they got ambushed, his partner ended up dying, and not Constantine froze in the moment, and because he froze in the moment, he didn't help his friend, and he didn't go deliver that message. And by the time he finally like got himself together and got back to the camp, his entire unit had died, and he felt very like he has very strong PTSD from that. And he blames himself, which is why he said he wanted to invent time travel so he can go back in time and save everybody's life. But he said it wasn't working because the time travel thing wasn't working for him. And that made sense because his friend, like his partner, it was more than them just being like military, like soldier friends. Like the not Constantine character, he's gay. And he actually, like, he was in love with the guy, like, like he had feelings for him. And I kind of felt that too. Like, I mean, it's like, I didn't want to guess because I wasn't 100% sure, but in the episode before that, when Sarah had told him that she married a woman, the way he reacted was almost just like, he wasn't reacting like, "Oh my God, you married a woman." He reacted as though like, "Wow, I didn't think that was possible." So that's it. So to find that out, that makes more sense. And I said, but he feels a lot of guilt of it. He feels a lot of guilt because he feels like he let his entire team down. So then Bayrod ends up busting through the facility. He rescues both of them. They end up stealing the parts that they need to fix the time machine, and then they head back to camp. When they head back to camp, by that time, Sarah and Spooner had killed some squirrels. Ava and, Astra have enough firewood for the next 3 years. And Nate decided, he talks to Zari and tells her that he does want to be in the totem. He said as long as he's with her, it doesn't matter. And then, Gary and Gideon, they're sitting there, like being all lovey-dovey because the two of them just had sexual relations. And, and I said, and now they're just waiting for the time machine to be fixed so they can get the hell out of Dodge. Now, the Bishop portion of the episode, which was pretty much the whole episode, the episode starts with Bishop and Ava, his Ava clone. He introduces her to the Wave Rider because Bishop built his own Wave Rider. He takes his Gideon that he has and he uploads his Gideon into the Wave Rider. When he uploads, and there's still only one bathroom. When he uploads them into the Wave Rider, he takes the Time Master's Oath, which I don't even think Sarah took, and they end up going throughout time, And Gideon says like, oh, like your responsibility as a time master is to protect the timeline, to protect history. So now he's basically Rip Hunter. And his whole thing is he's like, yo, I just want to destroy the legends, Gideon. And then she's like, I advise against that because they could cause ripple effects in the timeline. But he's just like, nah, we gonna kill him. So now they answer a couple of questions. In the season finale, when the legends were walking back to the ship, and then another wave rider came out of nowhere and blew up their wave rider. That was Bishop in his wave rider, basically running amok, you know, and trying to kill the legends. He actually thought the legends were on that ship, but it turns out that they wasn't. The situation with the Hoover bot, because Gideon was just like, oh, the legends accidentally killed J. Edgar Hoover, and you know, like that must be taken care of. So they came up with the idea, because what they were going to originally do was they were going to make like a clone, like an actual like human clone of Hoover, and send Hoover back there so he can carry out his mission. But then Gideon had said, if you create a clone, a human clone, there's a chance that the clone might take a different path and not follow the path that J. Edgar Hoover made. She said that you know, the Hoover replacement has to follow Hoover's, you know, historical events to a T in order to preserve the timeline. And then Gideon threw a cheap shot at Ava because she was just like, oh, your other Ava clone broke away from you and ended up getting married and loving a woman. So it's like Gideon and Ava, they're both like taking cheap shots at each other throughout the course of the entire episode. So then Bishop comes up with the idea. He's just like, well, let's make the clone a robot clone so this way we can program it to do what needs to be done. So he sends the Hoover clone, and then Gideon also brings up, she's like, oh, your Hoover clone was discovered, and now, you know, she's like, Thomas Edison had a heart attack, and now he's dead. So now they got to make a Thomas Edison clone. So it shows you the moment where Gideon and them, like, they made the Thomas and Edison clone, and they made the Hoover clone, they sent the Hoover clone back, and they're just like, you know, it's just like this whole big thing where he keeps just like sending out robots. And the whole time, Ava's just like, you know, I don't think this is a good idea. Well, Ava was the one that came up with the robot idea, but she wanted to leave, and she was just like, oh, she said, now that we've got history back on track, she's like, let's go back to our time. And then Gideon was like, no, we're supposed to be here for all eternity. And they said the two of them were beefing. And then Gideon got to a point where she said that there's only supposed to be one time master and one ship. So she ends up telling the Ava clone to go to the cargo bay. And when the Ava clone went to the cargo bay, Gideon opened the hatch and blasted the Ava clone like into the timeline. And I don't think that particular Ava clone is dead. I feel like she just popped out somewhere, like in some random time, and she'll be back. Like she'll definitely be back. And you know, then after that, then Bishop found out. He was like, oh, what'd you do to my Ava? And then she was like, I got rid of her because she was damaging to the situation. She was just like, you're a time master, and we don't need a second in command, you know. And then she was just like, and then Bishop found out Gideon made a clone of him to carry out the events of last season. And when Bishop found that out, he said, wait a minute, this clone version of me, he's going to kidnap a superhero, and he's going to try to create like clones, and there's going to be aliens. And then he was just like, wait, I became the villain. And then he was like, the legends actually gave me a chance to redeem myself, but I didn't take it. And then he started having like remorse and everything. He was just like, yo, like I messed up. He said, I thought the legends were the bad guys, but he was just like, I'm the bad guy. I'm the person who ends up becoming the bad guy. And then he was just like, oh, this can't be. And then he said to Gideon, he was like, why would you make a robot clone of me? And then she told him, she said that the reason why we have the robot clone is because she said that the robot clone is going to carry out what you've done throughout the course of your life, you know, to a T. And she said, you're going to stay here on the Wave Rider with me for the rest of your life, and you're going to help me fix the timeline. So, of course, Bishop wasn't trying to hear that, and now he's scrambling to try to get away from Gideon because Gideon basically made a robot clone of him to live his life and to carry out his life as the villain. And now our Bishop, like, he's having second remorse because now that he knows he's the villain, he said, this isn't what I signed up for. This isn't why I started the Ava program. He's like, I thought the legends were the bad guys, but I was wrong. And then, you know, Gideon was like, oh, but don't worry because you took the oath. So, like, you know, it'll be me and you forever. You're the new Rip Hunter. So now, when we were, this is now back in, we find out we're in the legends are in 1986, and they're in Chernobyl. And on that day, Behrad had said that there's supposed to be like a nuclear reaction, like a big nuclear explosion that's supposed to injure and hurt a whole bunch of people. So he was just like, yo, we got to get the hell up out of here before that nuclear explosion happens. See, but then not Constantine, he felt guilty in the moment, and feeling the remorse of not being able to save his crew from back in the day, he ends up warning everybody on the base to get out of there and to flee because he said that in another day or so there's going to be a nuclear explosion and you all need to get out of here and save your families. He said that he couldn't in good conscience, like let those people, like suffer and let those people die. And Behrad agreed with them. So when the three of them went back to the camp where the rest of the legends were, they told Sarah and Ava what happened. And then and then Ava told them, she was just like, yo, that's a big deal, because she said that the Chernobyl thing, that's not a footprint. She's like, that's like a mountain of a change because it affects so many different lives. And then Sarah was just like, yeah, she's like, plus it's going to alert the other wave rider that we're here. So they were just like, yo, everybody up in the time machine, because at that point the Tarazis had fixed the time machine and they were getting ready to take off and like go to a different time. When the evil wave rider got word, because Gideon had told Bishop, she was just like, oh, there's a disturbance in Chernobyl 1986. She was just like, oh, like somebody's messing with history and it's the legends. So now you can go kill them the way you're supposed to. And then he was like, I'm not going to do it. So when they showed up in Chernobyl, to kill the legends, Bishop backed out at the last second. He ended up running. There was only one place on the ship where Gideon's optic systems couldn't see him, and that was in the bathroom. So he goes into the bathroom, he sits on the toilet, pushes a button, and then she was just like, oh, you can't run, Bishop. And he was like, watch me. He pushes a button and he parachutes himself. It was like an ejection seat on the toilet, which is crazy. He catapulted himself out of the wave rider, and he was gonna like swoop down and intercept the legends and try to help the legends and tell them what's going on with Gideon. So, but the funny thing is, when the gang was back in the time machine and they were getting ready to transport into a different time period, just as they were about to disappear, Bishop started like falling down on them on the parachute, and then everybody looked up and they saw him, and then the time machine like blasted him and blasted them, and everybody got taken away to God knows where. And that's how the episode ended. So now we have, like, Gideon is basically the big bad, because it was a Gideon clone. Bishop had cloned Gideon's hard drive from last season. He wiped away her personality, all the personality stuff that Rip Hunter put into her system. And now she's just like a mindless robot whose only job is to carry out the mission. I saw in the coming attractions for when we return, she's gonna end up doing like an evil Legends team, so that should be funny, like Legends versus Legends. But I'm here for it. The fact that Gideon is here in human form, but she's also a villain on the Wave Rider, that's gonna be interesting, especially when the moment comes when human Gideon steps onto the Wave Rider and has a conversation with Robot Gideon. So thank you for tuning in. So share your thoughts and your questions below. Like I said, quick episode of Legends. Not a lot happened, but we did get the Bishop backstory. So now we know, what to expect, what's going forward. We know like who's good, who's evil, who's this, who's that. So I said, so we can share our thoughts and we can talk about it. Check me out on Twitter. Check me out on Instagram. The next Legends of Tomorrow video will be the mid-season finale, and then we'll be back. We won't be back until mid-January, January 12th. So we'll definitely get a break for that, break for Legends, break for Batwoman, but we're still going to have The Flash. We're still going to have Young Justice, and for you Marvel fans, Hawkeye started as well. Thanks for tuning in, guys. So until next time, for the mid-season finale of Legends of Tomorrow, we'll be back in this bit.